Imagine this. A researcher walks up to a capuchin monkey holding a piece of food. She shows it the food, then hides it in one of two containers. The monkey watches carefully. It points to the correct container. Now the researcher does something different. She shows the food again, hides it. But this time, she secretly moves it. When the monkey opens the container it chose, the food is gone. The researcher shrugs, acts innocent. The monkey doesn't move on. It doesn't get confused and try again. It stares at the researcher not with frustration, with something colder than that, something that looks uncomfortably like suspicion. Because here's what most people don't know, what most scientists didn't expect to find. Monkeys don't just observe your behavior, they track your intentions. And when your intentions don't match your actions, something in that primate brain registers it, files it, remembers it. They know when you're being honest, and they know when you're not. Welcome to Primal Mind. Today we're going somewhere most animal documentaries are afraid to go. Inside the moral and psychological architecture of the primate mind. Because deception is not a uniquely human invention. The capacity to detect it isn't either. Long before humans developed language, courts, or social contracts, primates were already running sophisticated calculations about who to trust, who was reliable, and who had lied to them before. This wasn't philosophy, it was survival. And the cognitive machinery they built to navigate a world full of deceptive group members is more refined, more nuanced, and more emotionally loaded than most people ever imagined. What we're going to explore today will make you rethink your relationship with every primate you've ever encountered, and it might make you rethink something about yourself. Let's start with the research, because the data here is extraordinary. In a landmark series of experiments conducted at Kyoto University, chimpanzees were placed in a situation where two human trainers competed for their attention. One trainer always showed them where food was hidden, accurately, reliably, every time. The other trainer consistently misdirected them, pointed to the wrong location, kept the food for himself. Within a very short number of trials, the chimpanzees had completely stopped following the instructions of the deceptive trainer. They didn't just ignore him, they actively did the opposite of what he indicated, as if they understood that his signals were inverted information. They had not only detected the deception, they had built a predictive model of it and were using that model strategically. This is not instinct. This is theory of mind, the cognitive ability to attribute mental states to others, to understand that another individual has beliefs, and that those beliefs can be false. For decades, scientists debated whether non-human primates possess this capacity. The evidence now suggests they do, at least in functional, behaviorally meaningful form. And the implications are profound. Here is what makes this even more unsettling. Monkeys aren't just tracking outcomes, they are reading you. Your gaze direction, your body posture, the consistency between what your hands do and where your eyes go. Primates are exquisitely sensitive to gaze cues, and research has shown that they use human eye contact or the deliberate avoidance of it as a signal of intent. In one study, capuchin monkeys were presented with two experimenters. One made eye contact while offering food, a signal of engaged, honest interaction. The other avoided eye contact, which in primate body language is often associated with concealment or submission around a desired object. The monkeys consistently preferred to interact with the eye contact experimenter, not because of the food itself, but because of what the gaze communicated about reliability. They were reading social honesty signals, the same signals humans use, largely unconsciously, every day. And when those signals don't line up, when your eyes say one thing and your hands do another, the primate brain catches it, not always consciously in human terms. But at the level of trust calculation, the mismatch is registered and stored. Now, here is where the science becomes philosophically uncomfortable. Frans de Waal, one of the world's foremost primatologists, spent decades documenting something he called moral behavior in chimpanzees and other primates. Not morality in the human philosophical sense, but the behavioral and emotional precursors to it: fairness, reciprocity, punishment of cheaters, consolation of victims. In one of the most famous experiments in primate psychology, Two capuchin monkeys were placed side by side in adjacent enclosures, able to see each other clearly. Both performed the same simple task, handing a researcher a small stone, and received a reward in return. For several rounds, both received cucumber slices. Acceptable, functional, they complied. Then one monkey began receiving grapes, a far more desirable reward, while the other continued to receive cucumber. The cucumber monkey watched this happen. Then it received its cucumber. It threw the cucumber back at the researcher. This is not a quirky animal moment. This is a primate detecting inequity, processing it as unfair, and expressing something that functions like moral outrage. The monkey wasn't just hungry, it was offended. It had a sense of what it was owed relative to another. And when that expectation was violated, its response was emotional and targeted. What does that tell us? It tells us that the social contract, the basic architecture of fairness and expected reciprocity, did not begin with human civilization. It began here, in the primate brain, millions of years before us. We established in a previous video that monkeys can remember human faces for years. But what they remember isn't just the face. It's the behavioral record attached to that face. Think of it as a biological ledger. Every interaction is logged. The trainer who reliably delivered food, the researcher who moved the reward when you weren't looking, the handler who was present the day something painful happened. These are not vague impressions. They are specific, individual, behaviorally tagged memories. Field researchers who work with the same primate troops over years consistently report a fascinating pattern. The animals calibrate their level of engagement with each human based on that human's history of reliability. Researchers who have always been straightforward, who have never tricked, startled, or deceived the animals, are approached more readily, tolerated at closer distances, and incorporated into the troop's social map at a higher trust level. Researchers who have been involved in stressful or deceptive interactions, even years prior, are treated with measurable wariness. The monkeys are not hostile necessarily, but the buffer zone is wider. The eye contact is more frequent and more evaluative. The body language reads, "I remember what you did. I haven't forgotten." Trust in the primate world is not a default state. It is earned, tracked, and conditional. At this point, it would be easy to keep a comfortable scientific distance, to admire primate cognition from the outside and move on. But the more honest conclusion is harder to look at directly. Every cognitive system we've described today, deception detection, gaze reading, inequity aversion, long-term trust memory, the emotional response to betrayal, exists in you, in an elaborated, language-wrapped, culturally overlaid form. But the substrate is identical. When you feel that instinctive unease about someone whose eye contact feels off, whose story doesn't quite add up, whose behavior contradicts their words, that is not sophisticated human judgment. That is primate machinery, ancient and automatic, doing what it was built to do over tens of millions of years of social evolution. When a betrayal by someone you trusted hits differently than a betrayal by a stranger, that is the same fairness calculus the capuchin monkey was running when it threw the cucumber. We inherited this system. We refined it. We built legal systems and ethics frameworks and social norms on top of it. But the foundation is primate. The foundation is old, and it is running constantly beneath every human interaction you have ever had. So where does this leave us? If primates can detect deception, track honesty, build trust profiles of specific individuals, and respond with something that functions like moral emotion, then the line between animal and human psychology becomes less a wall and more a gradient. And the question that should follow from that is one most people don't want to sit with. If a monkey can tell when you're being dishonest, not through language, not through logic, but through the deep reading of behavioral signals, what does that say about how transparent we actually are to the creatures around us? We move through the world assuming our inner states are private, that animals see our surface behavior and nothing more. But the research suggests something different. The ancient systems that evolved to detect deception, in primates, in the ancestors that came before them, are exquisitely sensitive to the gap between what a living creature shows and what it means. You are more readable than you think, to them, and perhaps to each other. The next time you encounter a monkey, at a sanctuary, in the wild, even on footage. Watch what it does with its eyes. Watch where its attention goes. Notice whether it approaches or holds back, and understand that this decision is not random. It is the output of a cognitive system that has been evaluating you from the first second you entered its awareness. It is reading your reliability, your consistency, your honesty, and it has been doing this far longer than our species has had words for any of those concepts. The primate mind is not a simpler version of the human mind. It is the architecture beneath it, the original code that everything we call intelligence, morality, and social awareness was written on top of. And it knows with quiet, unsettling precision when something doesn't add up. Stay curious, stay primal,